I've been working at Northbridge Dynamics since I was 23. Fresh out of college, I started as a junior analyst in a cramped office above a pizza shop in downtown Chicago. Back then, we were just 12 people with big dreams and even bigger coffee habits. Now we occupy 3 floors in a glass tower, and I barely recognize the place. You know how people say they grew up with a company? That's exactly what happened to me. I watched Northbridge transform from a scrappy tech startup into something Fortune 500 companies call when they need infrastructure solutions. I was there for every product launch, every merger, every crisis. When our servers crashed during the Y2K scare, I spent 3 nights straight in that old office, surviving on cold pizza and determination. When we finally went public in 2010, I stood in Times Square watching our name scroll across the ticker, feeling like a proud parent. My title never sounded impressive. Senior Systems Architect. But titles don't capture what you really do they? I was the guy who knew where all the bodies were buried, metaphorically speaking. I understood our legacy code better than the people who wrote it. New hires would come to me when documentation failed them. Managers would pull me into meetings when clients asked uncomfortable questions about our older systems. The thing is, I never played politics. While others networked at happy hours and golf outings, I focused on the work. Maybe that was naive. I thought competence spoke for itself. I believed that if you did your job well, if you were loyal, if you never let the company down, that would count for something. When Dorian Wexler became CEO 3 years ago, everything shifted. He came from Silicon Valley, all TED Talks and disruption rhetoric. In his first all-hands meeting, he talked about pruning the corporate tree and optimizing human capital. The younger employees ate it up. They loved his casual Fridays that turned into casual every day, his open floor, plans, his promises of stock options. But I noticed things. Good people started disappearing. Not the flashy ones who presented well in meetings, but the quiet ones who kept things running. The woman who'd managed our database architecture for 15 years, gone. The guy who understood our client relationships better than any CRM system, let go during a restructuring. Each time, Wexler would send out an email about exciting new directions and fresh perspectives. I kept my head down. I had a mortgage, 2 kids in college. Sarah needed her insulin, and good health insurance isn't something you gamble with. So I adapted. I learned the new buzzwords, attended the mandatory innovation workshops, even attempted to use Slack despite preferring email. The invitation to this year's corporate party arrived in October. Celebrating excellence, it read. Black tie optional. I almost didn't go. These events had become spectacles, ice sculptures, celebrity DJs, themes that seemed designed for Instagram rather than actual celebration. But Sarah convinced me. You've given them 29 years, she said. Show up. Let them see you. So I dusted off my good suit, the one I wore to my daughter's wedding. I practiced my small talk in the mirror, reminding myself to smile, to seem engaged, to play the game just this once. I had no idea I was walking into an ambush. The Palmer House Ballroom was everything you'd expect from a Chicago landmark. Crystal chandeliers, marble columns, that old-world elegance that makes you instinctively check your posture. I arrived 20 minutes late, intentionally. Easier to blend into a crowd than make an entrance. The room pulsed with electronic music I didn't recognize. Colleagues I'd known for years looked different under the theatrical lighting, younger maybe, or just more willing to pretend. I grabbed a beer. They had craft cocktails with names like Innovation Elixir, but I stuck with what I knew and found a spot near the back. That's when I saw Brenda from HR. We'd started the same year, back when HR meant one person with a filing cabinet. She caught my eye and waved me over, but her smile seemed forced. Harold, she said, squeezing my arm. Good to see you here. Wouldn't miss it, I lied. She leaned closer and I smelled wine on her breath. Listen, just enjoy yourself tonight, okay? Whatever happens, remember you're valued. Before I could ask what she meant, the music cut out. Wexler took the stage, all confident swagger in his designer suit. He started with the usual record, profits, game-changing partnerships disrupting the industry. The crowd ate it up, whooping at every pause. Now, he said, for something special, a little behind-the-scenes look at what makes Northbridge great. The lights dimmed. A projection screen descended. The video started innocently enough. Office footage, team building exercises, clips from product launches. I even spotted myself, in the background of a few shots hunched over a keyboard, doing what I'd always done. Then the tone shifted. The video cut to what looked like smartphone footage, shaky and poorly lit. Wexler's voice, but different, slurred, unguarded. He was in what looked like a private club, surrounded by other executives I recognized. They were laughing about something. The old guard, Wexler was saying, they just don't get it. Take Harold and Systems. Christ, the guy still prints emails. Probably has a Rolodex somewhere. More laughter. Dead weight. We're cleaning house after the holidays, starting with him. Can't have fossils slowing us down. Someone off camera said something I couldn't catch. Oh, he's loyal, all right, Wexler continued. Loyal like a dog. Too stupid to see the writing on the wall. We'll give him a nice send-off, make it look dignified, but he's done. First quarter guaranteed. The video kept playing, but I couldn't hear it anymore over the roaring in my ears. 200 people in that ballroom, and I felt every single pair of eyes find me. Some looked away immediately. Others stared with the fascination usually reserved for car accidents. My legs moved without consultation. I was walking, not running. I had that much pride left. Toward the exit. Behind me, nervous laughter. Someone, trying to change the subject. Wexler's voice sharp and angry, demanding to know who had included that clip. Brenda tried to stop me at the door. I pushed past her, past the coat check, past the doorman who'd greeted me an hour earlier. The Chicago night hit me like a slap. I loosened my tie, suddenly unable to breathe properly. My phone buzzed. Sarah, texting to ask how the party was going. I stared at the screen, not knowing how to compress humiliation into a text message. How do you tell your wife that your career just ended not with a pink slip or a closed-door meeting, but as entertainment for people you'd worked alongside for decades? I walked 7 blocks before I realized I'd left my car at the hotel. By then, I didn't care. The cold felt good against my burning face. Let them keep the car until morning. Let them keep everything. After 29 years, what was one more night? Monday came like a hangover. I'd spent the weekend in a fog, replaying that video in my mind, seeing those faces in the crowd. Sarah tried talking to me, but I wasn't ready. I couldn't find words for what had happened. How do you explain that your professional worth was reduced to a punchline at an open bar? I drove to work on autopilot. The security guard nodded like always. My key card still worked. For a moment, I wondered if I'd imagined the whole thing. Then I saw the email from HR. Mandatory meeting, 9 a.m., bring personal items. The conference room was too bright. Brenda sat across from me with a younger woman I didn't recognize. Legal, probably. They'd prepared a folder, severance package, non-disclosure agreement, transition timeline. Very professional, very clean. This isn't about performance, Brenda said, not meeting my eyes. The company is moving in a new direction. Right, I said. Younger direction. The lawyer shifted uncomfortably. We're prepared to offer a generous package. 3 months' salary, continued health benefits through 6 months, I interrupted, and I keep my company laptop. They exchanged glances. The laptop was worthless to them, 3 years old, due for replacement, but I had my reasons. Fine, the lawyer said. Sign here. 20 minutes later, I was in the parking garage with a cardboard box. The security guard who'd nodded at me that morning now stood nearby, making sure I left. Company policy. Nothing. Personal. Sarah cried when I told her. Not sad tears, angry ones. She wanted to sue, to go to the media, to burn the whole place down. I let her rage while I sat at the kitchen table, strangely calm. Maybe I was in shock. Maybe I was relieved. After years of watching good people disappear, it was finally my turn. The first few days were the hardest. 30 years of routine, suddenly gone. I'd wake up at 5:30 out of habit, shower, dress, then remember I had nowhere to go. The house felt too quiet. I started taking long walks, started actually seeing my neighborhood in daylight. On Thursday, my phone rang. Unknown number, but local. Harold, this is Marcus Chen. We met at the infrastructure conference in Vegas, maybe 10 years ago, I vaguely remembered. Sharp guy, ran a consulting firm. We'd talked about legacy system migration over terrible conference coffee. I heard about Northbridge, he continued. Look, I know this is sudden, but I'm working on something that could use your expertise. Government contract, modernizing federal databases, your name came up. I'm flattered, but just hear me out. We need someone who understands how these systems really work, not just the theory. Someone who's been in the trenches. The pay is competitive, and honestly, you'd be doing us a favor. We met for lunch the next day. Marcus hadn't changed much. Still intense. Still talking with his hands. But his company had grown. They had offices in 4 cities now. Contracts with agencies I'd only read about in the news. Here's the thing, he said over sandwiches. These federal systems are dinosaurs, held together with duct tape and prayer. Sound familiar? I couldn't help but laugh. It was exactly like Northbridge's early infrastructure. The stuff I'd spent decades maintaining while executives talked about disruption. We need someone who speaks both languages, Marcus continued. Old school reliability, new school requirements. 3-month contract to start, but I'm betting you'll want to stay longer. Why me? Why now? He leaned back. Because I remember that conference. You were the only person who actually listened to my problems instead of trying to sell me something. And because... He paused. Because I know what happened at that party. Word travels. What Wexler did was garbage, and everybody knows it. I started the following Monday. Different building, different coffee, same familiar challenge of making old systems talk to new ones. But something was different. People actually listened when I talked. They asked questions, took notes, implemented my suggestions. After years of being background noise at Northbridge, it was jarring to be heard. 3 weeks in, I was debugging a particularly nasty integration issue when Marcus stopped by. By the way, he said casually, we might be auditing some corporate systems next quarter. Compliance review for companies with federal contracts. Northbridge is on the list. I kept my eyes on the screen. That so? Thought you should know. In case you had any insights about their infrastructure. Purely professional, of course. Of course, I agreed, fighting to keep my voice neutral. That night, I finally told Sarah the whole story. The video, the humiliation, the faces in the crowd. She held my hand while I talked, and when I finished, she smiled. You know what? She said. I think things are about to get interesting. The audit announcement came in February. Marcus called me into his office on a Tuesday afternoon, closing the door behind us. Never a good sign in my experience, but his expression suggested otherwise. Remember that compliance review I mentioned? He slid a folder across his desk. It's official. Northbridge is part of a broader federal investigation into contractor compliance. Apparently, some senator got wind of questionable practices in government partnerships. I opened the folder. Standard audit documentation, but the scope was extensive. Financial records, employment practices, contract fulfillment, technical infrastructure. My area of expertise was listed under critical systems evaluation. I need to ask you something, Marcus said. Can you be objective about this, given your history? You're asking if I can be professional about auditing the company that publicly humiliated me? Yes. I thought about it. Really thought about it. The anger was still there, simmering underneath months of new routines and small victories. But there was something else too. A cold clarity about how systems worked. How vulnerabilities existed not just in code, but in culture. I can be objective, I said. Their infrastructure has genuine issues. I spent years documenting them. Whether anyone wants to hear about them now, I shrugged. That's what I needed to hear. You'll be working with Agent Sarah Wong from the Inspector General's office. She specializes in technical compliance. I met Wong the following week. She was younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, with an engineer's precision in her questions. We spent 3 hours going over Northbridge's system architecture, and she caught every inconsistency I mentioned. "You know this infrastructure better than their current team," she observed. "I should. I built half of it." "And the vulnerabilities?" I hesitated. This was the moment where professional ethics met personal history. There are several areas of concern. Legacy systems that were never properly updated. Security patches that were delayed to avoid disrupting operations. Database access that was never properly restricted after personnel changes. She made notes. "Anything else?" "Financial reporting irregularities. Not my department, but I noticed patterns. Project costs that didn't align with actual work. Contractors who were paid but never seemed to deliver anything. Can you document this?" "Already did, years ago. Filed reports that were acknowledged but never acted on." The official audit began in March. I wasn't supposed to know the details. Marcus kept the teams compartmentalized. But information has a way of flowing through corporate structures like water through cracks. Northbridge was scrambling. Emergency meetings. Consultants brought in. Wexler himself leading damage control sessions. Then came the Thursday that changed everything. I was reviewing server logs when Wong appeared at my desk. "We need your expertise on site," she said. "There's a system they claim doesn't exist." "What kind of system?" "The kind that processes payments to contractors who might not exist." I knew exactly what she meant. 3 years ago, I'd stumbled across a parallel database during routine maintenance. When I'd asked about it, I was told it was for internal testing and to leave it alone. Like a good employee, I had. But I'd also kept records. "I'll need access to their server room," I said. "Already arranged. We go in tomorrow." That night, I couldn't eat. Sarah noticed, she always did, but didn't push. She just squeezed my shoulder as she passed, a gesture that said more than words could. "It's not about revenge," I told her later, lying in bed. "I know," she said. "It's about the truth." "Is it? Or am I just telling myself that?" She turned to face me. "For 30 years, you've been the guy who fixed things, who kept systems running, who did the right thing even when nobody noticed. That's not revenge, Harold. That's just you being you." I wanted to believe her. Wanted to believe that walking into Northbridge tomorrow with federal authority behind me was about justice, not payback. But as I lay there in the dark, I couldn't shake the image of Wexler's face in that video, calling me a fossil, promising to clean house. Tomorrow I'd walk through those doors not as an employee begging for respect, but as an expert with the power to expose every shortcut, every lie, every system they'd built on foundations I'd warned them were unstable. If that wasn't revenge, it was something close enough to make my hands shake as I reached for my old laptop, pulling up files I'd saved just in case this day ever came. Friday morning arrived cold and bright. I dressed carefully. My good suit, the one I'd worn to that last party, but this time with a visitor's badge and federal credentials. Wong picked me up at 7, driving a nondescript government sedan that somehow felt more imposing than any luxury car. "Ground rules," she said as we navigated downtown traffic. "I lead, you advise. Don't access any system without my explicit permission. Don't copy any data. And whatever personal history you have here stays outside. I understand." But when we pulled into Northbridge's parking garage, my body remembered every turn, every reserved spot, every surface I'd walked for decades. The security desk was different, upgraded since my time, but I recognized the guard. Jimmy Rodriguez. We'd talked Cubs baseball for 15 years. His eyes widened when he saw me, then flicked to Wong's badge. Mr. Mitchell." "Official business, Jimmy," Wong said before I could respond. "We'll need escort to the server room." The elevator ride felt eternal. 3rd floor, past accounting. 7th floor through development. Each floor held ghosts, conversations by coffee machines, late-night debugging sessions, small victories celebrated with takeout Chinese food. The server room hadn't changed. Same industrial cooling, same cable management system I'd designed, same hum of machines processing millions of transactions. But the access panel was new. Biometric scanner where a simple keycard reader used to. E. We'll need your systems administrator, Wong told our escort, a nervous junior manager I didn't recognize. He's in a meeting. Get him. While we waited, I studied the room layout. They'd added servers, lots of them, but the configuration was wrong, inefficient. Whoever had expanded the system didn't understand the original architecture. Harold? I turned to find Steve Kowalski, the current systems admin. We'd worked together for 5 years before my departure. He looked older, grayer, carrying the particular exhaustion of someone managing critical systems without enough support. Steve. I nodded. How's the legacy integration holding up? His laugh was bitter. You tell me. Half these systems still run on your original code. Wong stepped forward. Mr. Kowalski, we need access to all financial processing servers. Specifically, any systems handling contractor payments. Everything's documented in our compliance reports. All systems, Wong repeated, including parallel databases. Steve's face went pale. He glanced at me, and I saw the moment he understood why I was there. There might be some redundant systems. For testing. Show us. What followed was a careful dance of passwords, access codes, and increasingly creative explanations for why certain servers existed outside the main architecture. Steve was sweating by the time we reached the third subnet, his excuses wearing thin. This database, Wong said, pointing to a screen full of transaction logs. Why isn't it in your documentation? It's not active, just historical data. From 3 days ago? She turned to me. Mr. Mitchell, your assessment? I studied the logs, recognizing patterns I'd first noticed years earlier. This is a shadow payment system, processes transactions parallel to the main financial database but with different approval chains and audit trails. That's not, Steve started. Check the contractor IDs, I continued. Cross-reference them. With the main system, I'm betting half don't exist there. Wong was already typing. Steve stood frozen, watching his career evaporate in real time. I felt a pang of sympathy. He was a good engineer, caught in something bigger than server maintenance. 27 contractors, Wong announced. 12 million in payments over 18 months. None of them in the primary system. She looked at Steve. Who has access to this database? I need to speak to legal. Answer the question. C-suite only. CEO, CFO, and... He swallowed. Former executives who retained access privileges. The investigation exploded from there. More agents arrived. Boxes of drives were cataloged and removed. By noon, the server room was a crime scene, and I was in a conference room giving a deposition about systems I'd tried to flag years ago. Through the glass walls, I watched the chaos unfold. Employees clustered in confused groups, security guards at every exit. And then, just after 2 o'clock, Wexler himself being escorted from his corner office by 2 federal agents, his designer suit no armor against handcuffs. He saw me through the conference room glass. For a moment, our eyes met. I expected anger, maybe recognition of poetic justice. Instead, I saw something worse, complete incomprehension. He genuinely didn't understand how the old man he'd mocked, the fossil he'd discarded, could be sitting here while he was led away. Wong noticed the exchange. You okay? Yeah, I said, turning back to my deposition. Just remembering something about loyalty. The news broke Monday morning. Northbridge Dynamics CEO arrested in federal contractor fraud probe. The Tribune ran it front page business section. By noon, it was trending on social media, complete with leaked footage of Wexler's perp walk. I didn't feel the satisfaction I'd expected. Sitting at my desk at Marcus's firm, watching the story unfold on my monitor, I mostly felt empty. Tired, like I'd been holding my breath for months and could finally exhale. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing. Former colleagues, reporters, even a few executives who'd stood in that ballroom watching my humiliation. I ignored them all until one name appeared. Brenda from HR. Harold, I know I have no right to call, but thank you. For what? For being who you've always been. Professional. Thorough. honest. Her voice cracked. I'm sorry, for that night, for not doing more. You tried to warn me. Not enough, not nearly enough. She paused. Did you know, when they brought you in, what they'd find? I thought about lying, about claiming ignorance, but what was the point? I had suspicions, documented concerns. The shadow system was worse than I thought, but not surprising. Steve Kowalski's been fired, half the board resigned. They're bringing in emergency management. And you? Cleaning. Out my desk, 28 years and I'm done, maybe it's time. We said goodbye and I sat staring at my screen, processing the strange mathematics of justice. Wexler was facing federal charges. Northbridge's stock had dropped 40%. Hundreds of employees, good people who'd done nothing wrong, were updating resumes, scared about mortgages and school tuitions. Marcus appeared in my doorway. Busy day? You could say that. He sat down, studying me. Any regrets? About what? Doing my job? Answering questions honestly? About how it played? Out. Wexler's arrest was dramatic. I swiveled to face him. 3 years ago, I filed 17 reports about system vulnerabilities and financial irregularities. Each one was acknowledged and ignored. That video at the party? That was just the symptom. The disease was already terminal. Fair enough. He leaned back. Wong called, said you were instrumental in breaking this open. There's talk of commendations. Pass. You sure? It's good publicity. For us and for you. Marcus, I spent 3 decades believing work spoke for itself. That quality mattered more than perception. I was wrong about a lot of things, but maybe not that one. He smiled. This is why I hired you. By the way, that federal modernization project, it's expanding. We'll need a team lead. Interested? Same work, fancier title? Better pay, actual authority, and... He paused for effect. No corporate parties ever. Deal. That evening I found Sarah in the kitchen making her famous stress response lasagna. The counter was covered in ingredients. She only cooked like this when processing something big. Saw the news, she said without turning around. How do you feel? Honestly? Anticlimactic. I thought there'd be more. More what? Satisfaction? Vindication? Something. Instead, it just feels like debugging code. Find the error, fix it, move on. She stopped stirring, turned to look at me. You know what I think? I think you spent so long being ignored that being heard feels uncomfortable. Like wearing new shoes. So what do? Break them in. Get used to it. Because this? She gestured, vaguely at everything. This is what happens when competent people refuse to stay quiet. It's messy and imperfect and absolutely necessary. The investigation continued for months. More arrests, congressional hearings, industry-wide audits. Northbridge survived but transformed. New leadership, new culture, new systems built on the foundations I'd been advocating for years. Some former colleagues reached out talking about the old days with rose-colored hindsight. I was polite, but distant. That chapter was closed. A year later, at a conference in San Francisco, I ran into Steve Kowalski. He was working for a startup, building secure financial systems. We grabbed coffee, awkwardly at first, then with increasing ease. I should have listened, he said eventually. To your reports, your warnings. I thought I was being loyal to the company. We all did, that was the problem. You know what's funny? They hired consultants to rebuild everything. Cost them millions. They essentially implemented every recommendation you made 3 years ago. I couldn't help but laugh. Sounds about right. Do you miss it? The old place? I thought about it. The early mornings, the familiar hallways, the sense of building something meaningful. But also the frustration, the willful blindness, that final humiliation. No, I said finally. I miss who I thought we were. But that company, it never really existed. We parted with a handshake and promises to keep in touch that we both knew we wouldn't keep. Walking back to my hotel, I felt something I hadn't expected. Closure. Not the dramatic kind from movies, but the quiet recognition that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply continuing to be exactly who you are, even when the world tells you that's not enough. Especially then.